How's it going?
Hey Joe, good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good.
Awesome.
Very
Well,
excited to
today,
be here.
yeah, excited to have you, man. So, yeah, we'll get right into it. Yeah, here today with Shachar Meir. I can never get your first name right. Sorry, but I think I got it okay that time. But for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Shahar. I've been working in data for the past 20 years. I started my career as a DBA, Oracle 9206, just to date myself, if it means something. And since I've transitioned to data and leadership role, to a team lead role shortly after. And since then, I've always been in data and leadership, and I've built data analytics teams in small startups. I've built data teams in companies such as PayPal and Meta. At Meta, I
Nice.
was the first and only data engineering manager in London, and I've essentially built and grown this function in London from 4 data engineers when I started to more than 200. And
Wow.
yeah, I was in my last role. I was director of data engineering for all of Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger's trust and safety issues, which we can talk about if that's
Sure.
interesting. And these days, I'm an advisor and I support companies, startups, individuals in their data journey.
That's super cool. Good history too. So
Thank you.
definitely run the gamut of things. Yeah, well, walk me through kind of your work today. We can obviously get into your history, by way of what's going on today. But you advise companies and data leaders and so forth. Like, what are you seeing out there today? What are some
Yeah,
trends?
I'll tell you. So I left Meta last year, Meta or Facebook, whatever you want to call it. I left last year, and I started thinking about what is it that I want to do when I grow up. And I
Mm,
realized that over the past 20 years, I've seen many companies that have what I would consider to be good data teams, and they had good data platforms, and they're still not making it with their data, right? Something was just not clicking. And my previous CEO told me that in the best possible way. When I joined, he said, Shahal, we have so much data and we know nothing, which is, I mean, it's brilliant, right? Because that is
mm-hmm.
exactly the frustration that many companies uh, in our industry feel. So I tried to think, why is it that good companies with good data teams are not making it with their data, right? That was a question I was asking myself. And I basically I started investigating that, and my personal conclusion is that a lot of companies treat data as a technical problem they need to solve, and their mindset is, we're just going to hire this VP of data, we're just going to hire a chief data officer, they're going to build a platform and the magic will happen. Whereas from my experience, first of all, there is no magic. Magic doesn't happen. And the second thing is, if I reflect on where I spent a lot of my time as a data leader throughout my career, the technology is a big part of it, but there's 3 other areas where I spent a lot of time, which is people, process, and culture. And this is what I call the 3 missing ingredients of data. And this is, in my mind, the reason why many companies fail with their data. People is finding my champions, finding my sponsors in the organization, hiring, and data literacy. Processes is about creating processes that force people to use the right data in the right way at the right time. And culture is 2 things. It's about creating trust and building trust with the data, which is in many companies is just missing, and people don't trust the data, as well as creating the right incentives around data, which is often missing, and people are just not incentivized to use data. And I think I know how to fix these things. I have my playbooks from the past 20 years, and I'm advising companies on their data journey. And my clients vary from very small companies who are just starting to build their data teams, and they're like, oh, we want to hire our first analyst or our first data leader. We have no idea where to start or what we need, to big companies that have been doing data for a long time and it's not working and they don't understand why. And they have a strong data team in place, but something's not clicking and they ask for help.
It's really interesting because you definitely seen the gamut of different types of companies, but it seems like you're still seeing the same problems recurring no matter the size of the company. And you mentioned some of these big tech companies too that I would imagine have a lot of data and have a lot of sophisticated technology to process and store data. And you know, but why is it that why do you think they still have the same problems that the small companies do?
Because of people. In the end of
Yeah.
the day, I mean, I'll give you the thing I find mind blowing. When I joined Meta, I think that Meta was on the bleeding edge of data technologies, right? And Meta had
Hmm.
what I would consider to be the best in class. I left Meta a year ago, and I think that the industry is completely transformed, and the tools and technologies that are available for every small company, every startup that's just starting to build their data platform, some of them would be, far superior than what Meta has today. And they're still less
Sure.
successful, right? And the reason I think Meta is successful is not necessarily because of its tools and technologies today, but because of everything else I just told you, because of the incentives, because they have the right people, because of the processes that had been created over the years, and the kind of trust that they have all the way top down. And I went to companies as the head of data. I've been head of data in companies. I built data platforms. We had tools. We had data sets that were trustworthy. We had very good dashboards, and still there was no trust in the data. The CEO, when I would show them data that matches their gut feeling, they would say, "Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing." And when I would show data that doesn't match their gut feeling, they would be like, "Oh, I think you should check your data. It's wrong." And I would say, "No, it's not wrong. It's 100% correct." And
Interesting.
yeah, so this kind of trust takes a lot of time to build, and that's exactly what a lot of organizations miss.
Walk me through that though, with the trust part. Um, like, what does good trust in data look like?
I think that's a good question. I think that I'm not necessarily looking for the trust in data as much as the confidence that it gives people when they use
Hmm.
data to make a decision and drive a business outcome, right? So I think that Alex Schultz, our VP of Analytics at Meta and CMO, used to say, "Why guess when you can know?" Right? And a
Hmm.
lot of the things that you do with at Meta, when it comes to data, are first of all understanding what is happening, getting very strong conviction that you know what is happening, what you can control, what you can't control. You have good framing of the situation, and you use data and metrics to do that, and then you can just make decisions with a lot of confidence. And to me, this is trust, right? And I think that I see a lot of companies that don't have that level of conviction, and you ask them, take a, I don't know, pet food e-commerce company. You ask them, okay, why did you build this feature in your website in that way? And they don't know, right? They don't have that
Hmm.
very strong conviction. It's not like they can tell you, oh, we experimented, we tried four variations, and that's the best one. They really don't know, and they just try things and see what works for them. And I think that level of confidence, if you operate with a certain level of confidence, that comes from trust.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of there's a Bill Inman always told me his true north is like believable data that would produce value, right? It's pretty simple. It's not like the data. In some cases, it's hard to get, I would say, 100% accurate data or correct data. But if you believe it and you feel you can make a good decision off it and can take good action off it, then I guess it's the best you can do. So,
And the interesting thing is that trust in data and having perfect data are two orthogonal things, right? You can have perfect
yeah.
data and still not have trust, and you can have imperfect data, but you can have a lot of trust, right? You don't need the data to be 99.9% correct. It can be, in the right ballpark. You can work on a sample of data and you know that you're missing three products because you're not logging them correctly and what have you. But you see the metric moving in the right direction and it's static and it's a substantial movement, and you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing, I know it's going to work, and you launch that feature with confidence, or you make that business decision with confidence, and you know it's going to work.
Yeah. That's interesting, though. So walk me through this. I mean, you work with a lot of different companies. What happens when you go into a low trust, low confidence situation in a company?
Yeah, it's very common, and most of the companies I talk to, it's a low trust situation. They haven't built that, or maybe even worse, right? They had a lot of negative experiences that eroded trust, and now they just don't believe that they can make it, and they need the
Yeah.
confidence. So what I try to understand is, first of all, where they're at in terms of their data journey, their data platforms, their data teams. I spend some time with key people on the data team to understand who am I working with, what are they capable of. And then I try to choose one project we can do together. I'm not trying to boil the ocean. I really believe
Yeah.
that to build trust, the only way you can build trust is you know creating a sequence of positive small wins, one after one, and this is creating this positive cycle that will eventually lead to more trust in the data. So um, I'm really trying to choose one business objective, something that they really care about, and then see what we can do with their data and what are the lowest hanging fruits that we can do to sort of start shifting their mindset and direction, and show them that first of all there's a different way, and show the value, and then take it from there. And my projects are usually very, if I do a project with them, it's going to be something very small and quick. It's going to be just a few weeks, try to do something, deliver some value, and move on, but just to kickstart this cycle.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always found there's always tricky situations to get into. Um, and I've also found in some cases, I love your thoughts on this, but sometimes I would say a lack of trust and a lack of confidence in data or the data team, it's there for a reason. Like it actually serves people to have that level of low trust and ambiguity about the data. Have you seen that around?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
I think my my experience. I mean, have you ever traveled in a foreign country where people don't speak English and try to ask, to order food in a restaurant? And it's probably one of the most frustrating experiences, right? You look at the menu, you have no idea what these options are. Sometimes they're pictures, but they're very low quality, and you don't trust it that what you get eventually is, what you see in the picture. You try to speak with the waiters, and with the waiters, and they have no idea what you're saying. They're trying to say things in a language you don't understand, and it's really frustrating. The most frustrating thing about this situation is that this other person can help you if they understood what you want,
Yep.
and they want to help you. They just don't know what you're doing. And this is the kind of experience that I see most like not most, but many data organizations having with their business stakeholders, right? They're just
Sure.
not speaking the same language. So the business stakeholders, they know the data team can help, but they just don't know how to approach them and what they can get, what they can expect. The data team wants to be helpful, and again, it's because they're not speaking the same language and they're not on the same page. It's just not working, and everyone is frustrated.
It happens all the time. And I think this comes back to one of the things you were talking about. It's sort of the three missing ingredients of data, but I think that the culture and the people communication aspect is something that is big. I think you recently posted about this about the value of communication for data engineers in particular, right? I think that's huge. I think from our perspective, being data practitioners, we want to always approach things from a data and technology first angle. I found that outside of maybe the team you're working with or fellow nerds, nobody cares. They really don't.
No,
Just,
and
I
that's
think
fine, right?
it's fine. Yeah, I mean, it is fine. That's how it should be, right? But and in fact, though, I think it ends up, you have to be really careful about how you communicate these things because you could end up scaring people away or intimidating them, and then they feel stupid and, get on defensive and stuff. So it's a tricky tricky balancing act. I don't think a lot of people have cracked that, to be frank. So,
Yeah, and I think that data scientists are sometimes, or analysts are better because they're closer to the business. So the language they speak is closer to what some of their business stakeholders might be speaking, and that's why they understand each
yeah.
other better. I think that this is where data engineers get stuck. And I'll tell you a story if I can.
Hmm.
Several months ago, I have a daughter. She's 5 now, but she was when she was growing. She started accumulating a lot of toys, and she didn't have a lot of space in a room, and it was just getting very tight. So me and my wife bought a big IKEA cabinet, and we wanted to build it so we can put all of her toys in the cabinet, so she has some more floor space to play, right? And so I spent time, building this. And as I was doing this, I was reflecting on some interviews that I've had the day before. I was interviewing somebody, and I asked them, "What do you do? What do you do?" This was a data engineering interview, and the person told me that they use Scala and they use Spark and SQL,
Mm.
which is the equivalent of you asking me, "What did you do this weekend?" And I tell you, I used a hammer, I used nails, I used a screwdriver. And factually, that's 100% true, right? It's just not interesting, and it's not really telling the story of what I did. The better data engineers I've worked with over the years, when you ask them what are you working on, they tell you, I built a data set, I built a dashboard, which is the equivalent of you asking me, what did you do this weekend? And I tell you, I built a cabinet. And the best professionals I worked with, the best data engineers I worked with, when you ask them, what are you doing? They tell you, okay, my daughter doesn't have enough floor space in a room, so I'm building this cabinet so that she has space to play, right? Or we spend too much money acquiring the wrong customers, so I'm building this data set and a dashboard so that we can slice and dice and we can find pockets where we have very low ROI of our customer acquisition, and
Right.
as a result, we're going to improve that. But you'd be surprised how few data engineers I hear that actually talk about the work in that way. And the reason is because many of them, frankly, just don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I think we need to change.
How do we change that?
I don't know. How do we change that? I think it's, first of all, awareness. I think that a lot of data engineers are just not aware of that
Mm.
because they don't see the problem, right? They build things, they enjoy doing the technical work, they get instructions from a data scientist or a PM or their managers, so they're just happy building. They sometimes feel frustrated that they don't get recognition for the work or they don't get credit and that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, many of them are just happy doing what they're doing. So I think that first of all, it's about building awareness and making sure that people know that this kind of communication is important, that understanding business acumen is important, that connecting back to your business outcomes is the most crucial thing, and then gradually just teach them how to do that.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that's good. That's a good way to do it. Like, in a lot of cases, you don't know what you don't know. I think you and I were probably, I can't speak for you, but I know that early on, um, would I think go into math speak a lot and nerd out and stuff with the, business executives, and got yelled at a few times for doing that. It happens, right? Didn't do it again. So I think you learn, but that's how you learn is you have to get that feedback too. Like, maybe I don't understand what you're saying. Maybe you should try maybe a different way. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting one. I think another thing in your mind too is like data engineers aren't getting a seat at the table, and I think part of it is just the way that engineers, not just data engineers, I think software engineers too. Anybody who's just really code heavy and stares at a screen and interacts with code more than people, that's just going to be happening. It's kind of the proverbial old programmer where you just lock him in a room and throw a pizza under the door every now and then to make sure he's fed, but that's about it. So, but that person's responsible for building stuff. But I think more and more too, though, it's about communicating, with the quote business. But because it always has been like that. But I think now we're starting to recognize it more than we used to. So.
And I think that that's maybe one of the things that the big tech companies are good at. If you look at companies like Google and Meta and Amazon, where they have senior levels and they would have engineers that would be at a level that is equivalent to the level of a director or senior director or even a VP.
Yeah.
And at my time, I had the pleasure of working with people at that level. And you see how they think, how they talk, the type of problems they solve, the magnitude of the problems they solve. It's a completely different level, right? And
Hmm.
they really operate like a senior director, except that they don't have anyone reporting to them. But at the same time, when you take a problem at that scale, everybody's reporting to you, right? You just have to find
Right.
people and make them work for you. So the people skills and the communication, influence, planning, those kind of things, conflict resolutions become super important, right?
That's really interesting. What do you think made those, I don't want to call them 10x engineers, but maybe like principal staff level engineers effective, not only at their job, but also being able to communicate?
Like, you mean how they learned how to do that,
Yeah, I
or
mean, just
what
what were the
made them?
traits? What were the traits that you found that were impressive to you about these people?
I think it's the ability. So, big part of our job is dealing with a lot of information, right? And some of the when you solve problems, when you're an engineer, when you build a product, when you work on a big platform, one of the most important things is your ability to take large amounts of information, aggregate them, and frame them in a way that anyone can explain, right? And anyone can understand. And these are the traits. And I think that if you work with very senior engineers, it doesn't matter if you talk to them about architecture and they have a very clear framing in their mind of what the system should look like, what are the different components, what are all the design considerations, and why did they choose, a certain path versus another, or if you talk to them about the product and they can clearly explain how the product works and the different functions of it and the different problems that we're seeing and how they're approaching it. But this ability, this if you want to call it, if you want to use one word to describe that, I would say clarity. It's the ability to
Mm,
take a lot of information and create a lot of clarity. And the best engineers and not just engineers, professionals,
yep.
and practitioners I've worked with, they're able to create. They have a sense of clarity. They're able to explain things. They're able to understand things. They're able to frame them, take a bunch of information that nobody understands, and break it down into three, four categories. And that's the best trait that I think helps people progress to these levels and beyond.
Yeah, well, that's definitely true. I think having clarity, being able to express yourself, I think being able to synthesize problems, like that's a sign of true mastery as well. Like you know the topic or your domain inside and out so well that you can condense it to probably a couple sentences in terms of what you're doing, or
Oh,
you know, be very succinct but also get to the point. It's huge. And I see this. Like the best person I've seen it with this is Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's old business partner. Like he would be able to explain concepts in a couple sentences, but in a very profound way. Or like that completely encapsulates the entire idea in two sentences, and that's all you need to know, right? But that person, Charlie had such a profound understanding of the world and was able to synthesize things. He was also like almost 100, but he had a lot of time to think about things. But I felt like he was easily the smartest person I've ever been in the same room with. Not even nobody's even close to that guy. But he had such. I think Warren called it the best 30-second mind you'll ever meet on somebody. He's just able to think so quickly about something, and usually the answer is correct, right? But that just comes through like such a mastery of understanding, in his case, the world. But for technicians, it's the same thing. Like some of the best engineers I've met, and these are people you've heard of, but it's just like they're sharp, but they speak so simply you would never guess, right?
yeah.
Just,
And I think that with this level of clarity, you're also, I mean, you're able to simplify concepts that and simplify problems that people think are, almost impossible to solve and are extremely difficult. And you see these engineers that come up with a framework and they're like, yeah, we've solved this problem, 15 times already, and it's the same. We're
Yeah.
building the same thing over and over again. And the reason we do that is just because we missed that layer in our stack, and I just built this framework, and from now on we're going to be able to do that, you know, 50 times faster because that was the missing component, and nobody could see that except for them because they have this level of clarity in their mind.
But I feel like this level of clarity would definitely help, in this case, data engineers we're talking about. I feel like having that level of clarity when they're communicating with non-technical people would certainly help them probably get a better seat at the table and so forth. Like, is it possible to teach clarity to people?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think that people can improve. I've definitely coached people on that over the years. I've had people on my teams over the years who were really bad at communicating, and we worked on that. And there are some frameworks like the STAR framework for communication, for example, right? That you explain the situation and what you're doing about it and the result. And this is a good example of how you can communicate. I had an approach that I call peeling the onion, which you basically explain. You decide what is the point, what is the thing that you want to explain, and then you start listing all the things that people need to understand in order to understand that thing, which is basically the concept. And if you imagine a bunch of concentric circles around each other, and then you start peeling the onion by first of all explaining the context and then getting to the core. And by the time you talk about the things you want to talk, the person that's listening to you already understands everything they need to, like, they have all the context so that they're able to understand what you're telling them. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other techniques like that and methods that people can use, but I don't think that everyone can be exceptional in that. I don't
Yeah,
know that it's a possibility.
it is possible. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I guess what are the reasons do you feel like data engineers don't have a seat at the table, so to speak? I guess let me back up here. What does having a seat at the table mean to you?
Um, I think that especially in big teams, when decisions need to be made and somebody needs to steer the ship, you always look for the smallest group of people who can run the show, who can make the decisions, who can decide on the direction so that the organization can move fast. If you have a team of 50 people, made of engineers and product managers and data scientists and data engineers and designers and all of those different functions, and you need 50 people to make every single decision. That's not going to be very efficient, right? So
Right.
ideally, you want to boil it down to a group of two or three or four people who can make the decision, and these are the people who are going to be around the table when the decision is made, right? I think this is what people refer to when they think of seat at the table. And these people are always at
Yeah.
the forefront of what the team is doing, what the product is building. If you think of the way a business functions, right? Is the CTO, for example, part of all the decisions, or is it just the CEO, COO, and chief product, right?
Mm.
But what who would be part of the small circle that's leading and steering the company, the team, the organization? And I think that to be part of that circle, of course, the circle has to be as small as possible so that it's efficient. And to become part of that circle, you need to show a certain level of value, and people need to be convinced that not having you there is worse than having you there,
Mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
It kind of reminds me at Amazon of the notion of the bar raiser. Like, you want to hire people that are going to elevate the team. I
yeah,
guess what you're saying is you want people that are going to elevate the discussion too, and not just fill a seat for the sake of it. So,
and I think that a lot of data engineers, at least from my experience, are driven by that fear of missing out, right? So the fact that I'm not
mm,
around the table, the fact that decisions are made and I'm not aware of them, and all of that is making them doubt their value and feel lack of respect, feel like they're missing on something important. I want to say, first of all, not everybody needs to be around the table, and maybe in a lot of cases it's also perfectly fine that you're not there, and it's okay, and it's part of the dynamics of the organization, and you need to accept that. It doesn't mean that your work is not valuable. It doesn't mean that people don't care about what you do, and it doesn't mean that this is not recognized. But if you want to be part of that table, then you really need to speak their language. You need to add a lot of value. You need to show them that you can take ownership, you can take initiative, you can create clarity, as we just said, and help understand the problems the team is facing, and help basically steer the team in a better direction than what would have happened if you were not there.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm teaching a class right now with Sol Rashidi about this. It's sort of leveling up from practitioner to being a leader, right? And that could mean a lot of things to a lot of people, right? I chose not to climb the corporate ladder path, but I'm a leader in other ways, and that I think it's also showing people that there's I guess a prescribed way that I think a lot of people view leadership and quote having a seat at the table, right? It's like you gotta become a manager, then a director, then a VP, and so forth, and that's the standard path. But there's other ways that you can have influence too. As you point out earlier, there's amazing engineers that probably want nothing to do with the manager track because that means they're not going to be great engineers because they're not going to be engineering. So, that's the reality of it. But there's other ways you can lead, and I would say that those people that you mentioned, those amazing engineers, are just as much of a leader as somebody with an official title of a leader. Without that person, could the meeting happen? Probably not. Would anything happen? Probably not. So.
And that actually touches something very interesting, which is insecurities that a lot of professionals have. And I see a lot of people who feel like they're falling behind. They feel like they're just not good enough. They feel like they need to have a seat at the table and they're missing something by not doing it. And I think that one of the main reasons people get into that place is because they compare themselves to others.
Yep.
And you join a team, you join a company, you see this, PM who's been there for, 5-6 years. They know the product very well. They're really on top of everything. And you think, oh, I need to be like them. And you feel like compared to them, you're actually not driving conversations very well. You're not delivering enough value. You don't have enough ideas about the products. You don't understand things in the same way they do. And this is where they start getting disappointed and they start feeling, okay, I'm not good enough, and imposter syndrome and a bunch of other things. And I think that what I tell a lot of people and what I've been telling people in my teams over the years is, don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to your yesterday self, right? You basically want to get better than your yesterday self every day. There's a reason why this person is doing very well. And it doesn't mean that this is expected of you. But if you grow and you keep growing every day, you're probably doing better than most people.
That's such a good point. That's such a good point. And thank you for saying that to people too. I think that is a huge source of insecurity is that, why is my, in this course I'm teaching right now, it's a live course. We talk to the students and people feel like, I'm not progressing at the rate that I should be. But I'm like, what do you think you should be progressing at, right? And like, according to what criteria? You're trying to live somebody else's career now instead of, I think being the best version of yourself. And, and it's interesting because like I show up to this class just because I've more of an example of somebody who's like just done something different, like, and I'm perfectly happy. Like I wake up every day and what I do doesn't feel like work. I think that's, to me, that feels awesome, right? And I tell people, like, you need to find that thing to you that doesn't feel like work, that you wake up every day and you'd be like, this is, I'm just stoked to have this opportunity to do this and to really push this, whatever that happens to be, because that's something that you created and that's something that you're happy with, right? So, but all too often, and I think that part of it's a fault of companies too, and how teams set expectations. Like, this is what the career path looks like. and so it sucks in some ways because I feel like a lot of people are missing out on their full potential as a result, right? And they spend decades trying to chase basically a bunch of bullshit at the end of the day that probably doesn't actually matter to them. So, but
So how
it
did
is
you
what it
get to do
is.
what you're doing? I mean, how did you
I
get
think
to choose your
having
path?
I think having a terrible sense of dissatisfaction with a sense of dissatisfaction, I would say, with the situations I was in at work and realizing I probably couldn't change them, right? Like I wasn't an owner of the company. I wasn't probably going to be. I wasn't going to be the founder of a company and of this company. And I think there's just certain dynamics, or if you pay attention to it, you just realize, okay, so this situation is probably going to be a stalemate at best emotionally. So I could try and stick it out and try and do these projects, but at the end of the day, is that the best use of time, or do you want to go do something else? And so I think so I just always had kind of a chip on my shoulder with that, right? Always feeling like, maybe the boss is a total dumbass, stupid. Why do I want to deal with this bozo? And sometimes you realize you're the bozo actually, and that boss is actually pretty smart. The team was smart, and maybe you're the idiot. So that's a hard thing to process. But after going through that several times, I was like, I'll just go out on my own and do my own things, and I guess make my own mistakes. Made plenty of those, but then I think you start figuring out what you want to do and don't do. And I would say for the audience listening to this, entrepreneurship is great. It's also, I don't think it's a path for everybody. I've written about this before. I don't think most people should be entrepreneurs. It is, if you think a job sucks, imagine getting to work for yourself now and having a bunch of jobs you get to do, and a lot of uncertainty about where you're going to get money, and a lot of uncertainty about everything, actually, right? Do you want to put that on yourself? Most people couldn't hack it, right? I'm not saying that this is a glorious thing, but I'm just saying that's the reality of it. The highs are highs and the lows are very, very low. So,
Yeah,
but that's,
I know.
ultimately you figure out what you want to do, hopefully. But yeah, but you went on your own too, didn't you?
Yeah, it's interesting because I took the exact opposite path, right? Like I've been
Yeah,
in the traditional path, so to speak, for the past 20 years, and have grown, to director at Meta and all of
yeah,
that. And it was only like 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, when I started doing my helicopter pilot license, and I started reflecting on that. And one of my instructors was actually a huge inspiration because this guy is a medical doctor, and he's got a clinic, and he's seeing patients 3 days a week, and he's teaching helicopters 2 days a week. And he told me, Shahar, the clinic is my job, right? That's how I pay the bills. But the thing I love, my passion is flying, and the thing I love doing the
yeah.
most is teaching, and that's and he found a way to do both, right? And
That's
I
cool.
was super inspired by that because I could afford flying. I was super fortunate that I could afford doing something that's very expensive and many people can't afford, but I just
Sure.
never had the time. And I thought that he found a way of living his life. And then in January 23, when I got back from New Year's, I got the news that one of my team members was involved in a car accident, and unfortunately,
Crap.
she passed away, which was terrible, terrible news. And she was so young. I mean, she must have been 24, 25.
Oh, that's
First job
tragic.
after university, living the dream, working for her, for Meta, in her dream job. And it all stopped, and I started reflecting. This was horrendous, and I started reflecting a lot about that. And it's these two things coming together. On the one hand, my instructor showing me there's a different way you can live your life, and on the other hand, what happened with her. And I was reflecting on that, and I realized that from very young age I was taught by my friends, my family, by society, by everyone around me that there's only one way to live your life, which is,
Yeah,
you work for a company, you're employed for the rest of your life until you're, 65, 67. Some people retire early, but then you retire, you've accumulated a bunch of money, and you start basically living your life. And I thought, okay, that doesn't work for me. I want to do
yeah,
something different, right? And part of my goals right now is try to make my living, but only in 3 days a week as an advisor, as an independent advisor. But I'm trying to limit my work for, to 3 days a week, so I can spend one day flying, and I have longer weekends with my family, and I have more time to do the things that give me energy and things that I'm passionate about.
That's super cool. So does it feel like work to you, what you do now?
It doesn't feel like work, but
Awesome.
what you said about highs being high and the lows being low, I feel that. And the first year is extremely difficult. I mean,
It's
this
hard.
sense of insecurity, especially after so many years of just getting used to having a regular paycheck coming in, and it's very predictable. You know exactly when it's going to come in, you know exactly what it's going to be. And right now, I know what I'm doing in July and maybe August, and that's where it ends. I have zero visibility to what happens after that. And I'm sure it's going to be fine, right? But you just don't know. You don't know what is happening. And it's something you probably have to get used to, but it's hard.
Yeah, I found the biggest mental thing for me was just, I think getting really used to the fact you're gonna have to eat what you kill, right? That's just the mentality. It's, as an employee, like you say, you're used to that paycheck coming in, and that's great until, uh, you know, until you don't have it anymore. And that's, so, but you get used to, I think, like, yeah, having a steady paycheck, like, I have something like that now with, royalties I get and stuff. So it's like, probably have money in perpetuity from various things. I mean, that's at least a cushion, so you don't have to think about money anymore. But like, it took a long time to get there, and I would say 99% of people aren't going to have that, right? But like, I know what it's like starting a business and having, yeah, it's like every deal, you have no idea what the pipeline's like. You're constantly out there hustling, constantly have to, deals might fall through at the last second. That happens, right? And then you're just like, okay, cool. So, I always, was it Jeb Blount had a really good book on fanatical prospecting. I think that taught me a good lesson, and then I put into practice about the 90-day rule with prospecting, where it's like, you always have to have the pipeline going, because if you take your foot off the gas even a second, like, it takes you 90 days to get back to where you were. So you just can't let up ever.
Ever.
And it's exhausting, dude, because it's like, because you got to spend your time delivering, fulfilling, and selling, prospecting, the whole thing, marketing, everything. So yeah, for the audience out there, these are accounting, all the other stuff too, all the boring stuff, right? But that's all the stuff you get to do. If you think going on your own means you're going to be sitting around, on the beach with a laptop, which actually is terrible. You get sand on your laptop, it sucks. But yeah, I mean, what Shahar and I are talking about, this is what you're going to be doing, right? And there's going to be the pipeline thing that you mentioned is like, you don't know after August. Yeah, that's a real thing, dude. And that lights a fire under you for sure. So,
And the hardest thing is that sometimes deals fall, and I had many of those.
hmm
And it's not your fault, right? Like, I had this company that I was working with. They were super excited to. We'd already done one project together, and they wanted to do another one. And they sent a proposal, and I felt like they were super excited, and then they took the foot off the gas, and then they stopped responding to emails, and they got very slow. And
mm,
I asked to schedule another email, and basically what I realized is that they have a new CFO, and the CFO basically cut down all the consulting budget, not
yep.
recruiting any more new employees, no backfilling employees who had left, and all of that. And that's super typical, right? Every new CFO coming to an organization, usually the first thing they do is try to get a grip of the expenses. So I should have known better. I should have expected that and know that it's coming. But I did everything I could in the right way. They were ready to sign. They were super excited, and then it fell through, and it's not my fault.
Mm,
And that's the worst feeling, right? Because if you retrospect and you think, okay, what could I've done differently, and what should I do differently next time, and you don't have answers, you realize that you just keep going, and you're at the mercy of other people and other factors that you cannot control, and you can do everything right, and it's still not going to work, and it's stressful.
it is, and that's the nature of the beast. That's business. That is literally how it all works. That's Meta has to deal with the same thing, right?
Yeah.
sometimes things don't work. I just learned not to get emotionally attached to deals. That's all. 'Cause it's like it can eat you alive. That sense of the ups and downs. Is this deal going to happen? Is it not? Like I'm just like I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. The thing I always keep in mind, just to make sure that I know I put 100% is just time kills all deals. The longer it drags out, the probability of it happening probably goes to zero, right? But then you also realize too. I don't know about you, but like what I've seen is like there's also there's also a sense of like timing is everything too, and setting a good relationship with people is key. Maybe today's not the day for it. Maybe this year isn't. Maybe a year or two down the road, maybe they're ready then. That's
Yeah.
the reality of it too. So you always just want to keep a good rapport. Like I think the salespeople that I always hated when I had to deal with vendors were the really pushy ones that were just always like, let's sign the deal now. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't make any sense for me to do this. Why are you being pushy? Like the chance of me ever wanting to work with you in the future has dropped to zero because I don't like how you work. So it's a balance. So you need to, that's why I think again the pipeline is just so key. You guys have to keep it full because it's just some go, some don't. I don't know.
I agree. And when I started, I had the feeling that I'm finding the right clients at the wrong time. Like I knew exactly what their problem is. I knew I can fix it for them. I knew what I have to do. They wanted it in a way, but it was just not the right time because they were just before planning. It was the peak of the season. Something happened. They're just hiring a new CPO and they need to onboard that person first because they can start thinking about their data. They're just going through a massive reorg. They have the reasons, right? So it's like you find the right client at the wrong time. And then, as you said, it's just about maintaining the relationship, staying around, staying close, and finding the right opportunity to get back in and say, hey, is now a better time? Do you want to work now? And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's good. It's awesome. You're figuring this out and you're getting a business model that works for you. I mean, I think that you could build something super, probably are building super awesome for yourself that you can look back and be proud of. Because like you said, like you said, the expectation was always you'd go out and get a career and work till you're 65 and all that stuff. And for you, that's not what you want to do. And I think you'll look back on this opportunity and say that was pretty cool. So it's awesome. What are your thoughts on the state of the data industry right now?
Oh, so many things to say. I think, first of all, there's a lot of excitement with data, which hasn't necessarily been the case, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. There's a lot of awareness. And I
Yeah,
think that a lot of companies, a lot of executives are seeing data as a very strong lever to generate more revenue and to enhance their business. A lot of product leaders see opportunities to use product to make their data, to use data to make their products better, and so on and so forth. And I think that all the hype around AI is even, is making the pie bigger, right? Because I see a lot of very low tech companies that traditionally would not be interested in data. If you think of manufacturing and factories and
oh yeah,
companies like that traditionally would not think of using their data and not in very exciting ways anyway. And now all of a sudden they think, okay, I can use AI to improve my production and I can improve the quality and I can remove defects and that sort of stuff. And they're starting to get interested in also building the data platform because they need some data to train models. So I think it makes the pie bigger. I see a lot of innovation around data. I work with a lot of startups. I also advise to startups in the data space and startups that build for data products. And there's a lot of innovation. I think there's a lot of money in data as well. A lot of VCs
yeah,
are looking to invest in data, in AI, which is exciting. But what it causes is also a lot of fragmentation, right? And if you look at the set of tools that every data engineer need to be aware of, it's becoming too much. And if you look at platforms for ChatGPT to SQL kind of thing, I can think of at least 5 or 10 companies that do that right now. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but you probably don't need so many, right? There's only one or two that's going to win. Um, So I think that what is happening right now is that it's getting very fragmented, but what I hope is that it will start getting consolidated again into ecosystems, and it's already kind of happening with the big cloud providers. So you've got the AWS ecosystem and the GCP ecosystem, and Snowflake and Databricks are building their own ecosystem. So in a way, you're almost choosing a flavor, and that limits what you need to do. But there's also a lot of companies and a lot of tools that are essentially what I would consider to be a feature, and they need to be
Oh,
part
lots
of
of
a.
them.
They really don't. I'm not sure that there's justification for this thing to exist on its own. It needs to be part of something bigger. So I hope that
Yeah.
this kind of consolidation will eventually absorb a lot of these small companies and will create a data stack that is more manageable for a data engineer or
Oh yeah, I
for
remember
every data.
even a recent LinkedIn post I saw. Somebody was saying that they were not satisfied with Airbyte, for example, right? And so, what are some options out there? Then all of a sudden, it was like the vendor dogpile post. Every vendor you could think of that's in the data integration space was commenting, "Well, check out our tool." And I mean, there were so many. A lot of them I hadn't heard of either. I'm like, okay, this is just they're everywhere. And now, of course, all of them have, like you say, Texas SQL capabilities with LLMs and all this stuff. It's just it's hard to keep up. It's impossible. I actually stopped trying to keep up. I'm just like it doesn't, like in 99% of cases, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. I mean, it's cool that there's a lot of companies out there, but I just don't have enough time to pay attention to every single one of them. I mean, if you look at Matt Turk's Mad Data Landscape, I mean, there's like, what, 2,100 companies on there? I think something like that. That's just the ones that could fit on there. I think there's a lot more. So it's just like, how would you get to know any of these things deeply, right? If that was the number of children that you had, like you wouldn't even know who they are. So
Yeah,
it's
you
crazy.
won't remember the names, right? Which is what happens
Yeah,
to me with
it's
most data tools. Like I don't remember the names.
same.
But
Yeah,
I actually think it's a good thing. The fact that there's so much innovation and there's so much
yeah.
competition is actually pushing everybody to think of what is their differentiating factors and why are they better than everybody else, and it's pushing them not to build something that's mediocre and just works, but actually trying to shine on certain things. And I think it's going to make the whole industry better in the end, right? In 5, 10 years from now, we're going to look back at all of that, and we'll see a much better data technology landscape and data stacks and that are more coherent and simple and clear.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, if you look back even 10, 15 years ago, I mean, there's no way I think you or we were around then. I don't think you would go back to that world. I certainly wouldn't. There's no way, right? I like today. There's a lot of options out there. There's too many options, and I think kind of coming full circle on this, it's like I've written about this before, but I feel like there's no shortage of awesome tools at this point. I can't say that we have a tooling or technology famine in the industry, that there's anything fundamentally wrong with the tools we have. I still think it comes back to our ability to properly know how to use these tools to, quote, deliver value and get things done. I think that that's, and there's a lot of reasons for this. Like from a practices standpoint, we sort of went backwards in a lot of ways as an industry. I also think like the knowledge and skills gap is very real for a lot of these technologies. And third, it's just the basic things like you said, communication. We just sort of glossed over it. Like it doesn't matter. We got awesome tools. Like why do we need to talk to anybody about things? It doesn't matter, but it does.
And what's interesting is that a lot of these new technologies are actually not new, really. Like if you look
Right.
at things that do data quality, right, and they take pride at the fact that they can check how many nulls in a column and they can make sure that a column is unique. In 2004, when I was an Oracle DBA, I had constraints in my database. I could do that. Then we lost it, and now we
Yeah.
have it again, right? So, in a way, I feel like we broke something. Now we're fixing it again, and we take a lot of pride at that. But these are not new concepts, right? They've been there forever.
They've been there forever. Well, kind of closing out, like what are you excited about over the next year or two?
Uh, At a personal level or industry
Doesn't matter.
data
Doesn't
level?
matter. All the above, sure.
I think that I'm really excited about, at a personal level, just showing more companies the path to success with data and what else they
Mm,
can do, and also to share that with a lot of people. I'm trying to share a lot of insights and things I've learned over the years on LinkedIn and share the
that's
knowledge.
cool.
So, I'm excited to learn new things and then share them with the rest of the community. And on the innovation side, I'm super excited to see where all of that is taking us. What are all these new tools that are coming, and how they're going to come back together and come into, consolidate into more coherent products that we can all use. I'm
Yeah.
excited about all the innovation. I'm really excited about everything that's happening with AI, and I'm interested to see where that's taking us and where we're going to go over the hype, and then start seeing the real value and get some answers to some open questions about where this is going. But I feel like, we're seeing history unfolding in front of our eyes, right? It's
Yeah,
exciting.
it's exciting. It's exciting for sure. Um, yeah, slightly terrifying at the same time. If you take AI doomers, I had one of them on my show. But yeah, I'm optimistic things will work out. But yes, we'll see. Yeah. Well, oh, thanks, Sher. For people who want to learn more about you, how can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, Shachar Meir. Just find me on
Shahar
LinkedIn.
Meir.
Let's connect. Let's
Awesome.
continue the conversation. Feel
Yeah.
free to ping me, message me, join the conversation. And yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting as many of you as possible.
Yeah, you have awesome content too. The thing I like about your posts on LinkedIn is they come from a good place. They're not preachy. So yeah, they're just it's continuously really good. So thanks.
Thank you
It was
so
great.
much.
Great chatting
Means a
with you.
lot.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, cool. All right, well, have a good one. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Bye.